Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 21 Hats podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Feldman. For many, knitting may still conjure an image of a grandmother in a rocking chair, her cat sleeping and her doilies taking shape. In recent years, however, the quiet industry of tiny neighborhood yarn shops scattered across the U.S. has become an unlikely cultural battleground. It's been divided by charges of racism and cultural appropriation that have erupted in a series of social media firestorms, prompting some owners to close, sell, or rebrand their business. It may seem surprising that such a quiet pursuit could produce so much conflict, but it's really not all that different from the fissures afflicting the country as a whole. In this bonus episode, we meet three women who were not content to stick to their knitting. They are Adela Colvin, whose business, Lola Bean Yarn Company, is a prominent independent dyer of yarn based in Grovetown, Georgia. Gay Gigi Glaspie, a leading yarn industry influencer whose signature color is orange and who is based in Clifton, New Jersey. And Felicia Eve, who owns String Thing Studio in Brooklyn, New York, one of the few Black-owned yarn shops in the country. The episode is titled, The Changing Face of the Yarn Industry. I want to start by going through a little bit of the background of Adela and Gigi and Felicia and kind of how they got where they are. And then we'll talk a little bit about what's going on in the industry, why there is, of all things, a culture war in the yarn industry, try to make some sense of that. Adela, let's start with you. How did you discover knitting?
My next door neighbor, Bonnie, she was a retired principal from Battle Creek, Michigan. My husband had to go to Afghanistan to teach, and I was home by myself. Ms. Bonnie was aware of that fact, and we happened to run into each other checking our mail. And she looked over at me and she wanted to know how I was doing. I'm fine. I don't think you are, she says. Why don't you come over for some coffee? And I think we all have like those internal like biases and preconceived notions about people. And I said, to myself, what do I have in common with a, 70-something-year-old white retired principal from Battle Creek, Michigan? But I guess I'll go. Right. What else am I doing? And I went over and I walked in and she had some of the most beautiful Afghans, throws, curtains. She sewed just little like knickknacks and things all around her house. And I asked her, where do you buy your furnishings? And she says, buy. She says, I don't buy these things. I make them. What? You made this and that and this? And she knit, she crocheted, she sewed, she baked, you named it, she did it. And I expressed interest. I said, I would love to learn how to do this. And she gave me a crochet hook and one ball of white red heart yarn. And she said, read this little book, practice with this yarn. Any questions you have, you come knock on my door. And that's how it started.
Wow. Do you remember the first time you went into a yarn store by yourself?
Boy, do I. And it's actually the catalyst, or what started at the time was Adela's Crochet Cottage, but is now Lola Bean Yarn Co. I was looking for my local yarn store. And please let me say that the store that I'm talking about is closed because we have a new shop and people, you have super sleuths online and people are like, that has to be the shop she's talking about, and they reached out and they're like, please, people are calling and they're saying I was mean to you. And so the shop I am talking about is now closed. I walked in with the intentions of buying some yarn. And as soon as I opened the door, the person who was working in the shop looked me up and down and said her bathroom was for customers only. And I turned around and I got in my car and I drove home. It was so obvious that she saw, a plus size Black woman with natural hair. And I think I had a hoodie on and Converse and jeans. And, she made all of these assumptions based on those things. And to her, I couldn't possibly be there to purchase anything for crafting because crafters don't look like I do.
And yet you kept going. How did you wind up getting yarn?
Well, I did a lot of ordering online, but I said, I could probably dye yarn myself. And, you see people doing it or showing it. So I'm like, well, if people around me are doing it. Maybe I can. And I went on a YouTube University and I watched a couple of videos. I grabbed myself some Kool-Aid packets and some cheap wool that I found. And I dyed yarn and I put it in a crafting group. I'm like, look what I did today. I was so excited. Looking back at that yarn now, I'm like, oh, that was just awful. But I put it in the crafting group and somebody commented, they said, oh my gosh, that yarn is beautiful. How much would you charge for it? And the light bulb, you could probably like see it. Wait, you'll pay me for this. And that was all she wrote. I mean, full speed ahead. Equipment, acid dyes instead of Kool-Aid. I mean, I wasted no time, played no games whatsoever. And I just kept going.
You told us that you started under one name and then you rebranded. Why did you rebrand your business?
The birth of my daughter. For a long time, I wasn't very active in terms of like showing like my face and talking about the person behind the brand. And I brought this little girl into a world that was so chaotic. And I said, I want to leave this world a little better than it was when I came into it for her sake. And in order to do that, you got to show up. You got to show up. You got to tell your story. You have to let people know what's going on so that they can, in effect, help you to make these changes. So it was definitely for, my kids.
Tell us the difference, though. Initially, it was called Adela's
Crochet Cottage.
And then you went to Lola Bean Yarn Company with a very different logo. What was the thinking?
My first logo was very much craft centered, but it could have been a white person behind that brand. It could have been, you wouldn't know who was behind that brand. Whereas my new logo is a caricature of my daughter. So it's a little black baby. And I thought that would be a wonderful way to show her, have something for her as she gets older to see and be proud of, but also for people who look like me and who look like her, who walk into like these different yarn shops to see, wait a minute, there's a black baby, there's a black person, there's somebody black here, maybe not physically, but represented through her yarn. And hopefully it would welcome people and let other people know that Black people, we dye yarn. We're here. We craft.
Did that rebranding have an impact on your business?
Huge impact. First of all, who doesn't love a baby? Like, that was very smart, right? A baby, come on. Babies, they're perfect. But also, I was very intentional because, sometimes it's hard to reach certain people. But with a baby, because everybody loves babies, it's a Black baby. So this is a Black woman. But I mean, I could have easily used a Black power fist or something else. Because
babies are a little less threatening.
Yes, a little less threatening. And I might be biased, but I think my kid is adorable. Like she's
gorgeous. Yeah. Gorgeous.
For those who aren't familiar with the industry, you're considered an independent dyer, I believe is the term. What exactly does that mean, and how does the business work?
It means my back is always hurting. My shoulders are sore. What I do is I take natural fibers, wool, alpaca, Angora, and I use different types of dyes. And I add pigment, and people then buy them and make things like, that's not my yarn, but the sweater Gigi has on is hand-dyed yarn.
Mm-hmm. Do I need this change? We can. I was surprised. I have to say, I was surprised.
Yeah, because most of Gigi's wardrobe, it feels like, is Lola Bean.
Yeah. We can fix
it. Don't go anywhere, Gigi. You're up next.
People, they buy it, and they then in turn make, all types of creations for their own personal use or for loved ones. So that's what I do every day.
Is it just you? Do you have employees?
I have a Sue Speckler. I call him my husband, the washer of the pans. And for the most part, every now and again, when my kids want to make a couple bucks, they'll come in and help me out. But every skein of yarn that I have ever sold has only been dyed by me and has passed through these hands.
Wow.
My husband is a great support system. You know, if I need a labeler that day, that's what he is. If I need a pan washer, that's what he is. If I need somebody to sit next to me and tell jokes to keep me, you know, going, you know, throughout the day, that's what he does. And he spends a lot of time with the kids because he works from home and his job isn't as physically demanding as mine. So he'll do that part of it so that I'm able to go into the studio and do my work.
Got it. Gigi, how about you? How did you get into yarn and knitting?
Mine is kind of sad. I call 2012 my storm. And in 2012, I lost my dad suddenly, my mom suddenly, and then my job, my 22 years job, all at the same time. And maybe a year or two prior to that, I taught myself to knit. I had, like Adela, I started out with crochet. I learned to crochet in summer camp as a kid. You know, I could make a chain. I made a few blankets, but it was no big deal. Knitting always seemed very difficult to me because of the material that was created. So I automatically knew that wasn't something for me. But I ran a call center for Verizon and we had yarn. And I was like, what is this? And the little pattern was in the box. And I'm like, this is Greek. So I went on YouTube and figured out the pattern and made my first little holy scarf. And then I was done with it. I'm one of them. If you want me to do something, tell me I can't. And then get out of my way. Right. So fast forward, a friend was making a hat. She was knitting it. It was beautiful. And I was like, can you make me one? And she was like, she gave me a list of materials to get, sent me to Michael's. I got my stuff. I ran back. I put it on her desk and she slid it back. And I'm looking at her because she was on a conference call and she writes in a sticky. She said, no, you're going to do this. And I'm like, okay, I can't do that. She said, you said you know how to knit. I do, but I can't do that. So that day she taught me how to knit and around. I made an entire hat. So she started me off on it. But when my world fell apart, I turned to knitting. I tell people that I wrapped my heart in yarn and my yarn captured my tears. My yarn didn't have any questions. And I sat up and I knit. At the same time, I discovered Instagram. I discovered that there was a world, a community out there. And I was just like, wow, you know, it's funny. People to this day that are like, oh my God, Gigi. I said, would you stop? I used to make your patterns. I used to chase behind you. They're like, but you're Gigi. No, I'm just a knitter. So.
But you're not just a knitter. Tell us about being, I guess the term that's usually used is influencer. Is that, do you like that term? Is that what you call it?
I don't.
What are you then?
I guess I do influence people's purchases, influence their thought processes, but I
think I know you do that, Gigi.
Yeah. But you know what I don't like? I think, you know, to say that somebody's an online influencer indicates that there's some sort of payment involved with what they're doing, therefore taking away the validity of what they're saying and doing. And I am so not that. I have turned down payment for things that I don't believe in. Right. So I guess I don't like that term for the negative concept of it. But Adela made me realize my influence.
Someone called you a knitfluencer.
Yeah. Knitfluencer. Okay. I like that. I like that. I'll take that. But I think it's my passion. You know, I get so excited to this very day when I do something, when I get a color that I'm really shade of orange quite different from one of the other shades that I love. You know, that's just me. I'm not doing that because somebody is paying me to do it. That's just who I am.
Well, how did it happen? How did you become so influential?
I have no idea. Like I can't say that I set out to do that. One thing I can say that was in my mind's eye, I always I would watch and see people go to these different events that I had no idea existed and traveling even internationally to go to, and I was like, that would be the perfect job for me. I would love to be paid to travel to all of these places. I love having my camera. I love recording stuff and bring it back to the people that don't have an opportunity to do those things. But when I realized the power, when I realized my influence is the first time that Adela dyed yarn for me. I put out a call. I saw a pattern. I wanted to make it. And I said, I need somebody to make me 3 different shades of orange. And I think Adela was the first one. She said, take that post down because I'm going to do it. We argued about speckles because at the time I wasn't big on speckles, but she was like, okay, I'm going to do this. She did it. And I was like, Adela, how do I pay you? Nope. Only way I'm doing it, if you allow me to dress you is what her exact words were. I want to dress you. So got the yarn, did a video because it was absolutely beautiful. I made my pattern. I went outside. I took pictures. And I posted the pictures and everybody went bananas. Mm-hmm. I'm on her website. I can't find the yarn. Okay. She kind of sort of only made this for me. They were like, Gigi, but she can't. Okay, hold on. Y'all be quiet. Let me go over here and try to beg. Because at this point, Adela is family to me now. But then we didn't really know each other, right? So it was still a business transaction, if you will. And I'm like, guys, let me go talk to her and see. So we talked and she said, okay, I'm going to do 1 pre-order. I said, okay, 25 pre-orders later. Like I was sure she was never going to dye orange again. But what people don't know and what I don't often say, because I don't want to make Adela feel uncomfortable, but it was in the midst of all that I used to have an Etsy shop and I closed my shop. I used to sell things that I made. And I'm doing something and I hear the cha-ching, which is somebody giving you money and PayPal. And I'm like, who's sending me money? Because I don't have anything for sale. Like I shut my Etsy down and I looked and it was a lump sum from Adela. Something's wrong with this picture. I got the yarn.
Right.
Why are you giving me money? So I reached out to her and she said, listen, I sat down, I talked to my husband. She was like, you don't understand the amount of money that I made because of you. You don't know how much traffic you drove to me. And it was her that made me realize that I was influencing the sales of orange yarn. Like I was just being me. And I'm still just being me. And that's when I realized that there could be something in this. Now, was I confidently going to companies and saying, listen, you need to dye some orange and give it to me? No, I wasn't, because I didn't feel confident in that. Right. I just was doing what I do. The majority of the yarn that I had, if it's not from Adela, I bought it. Right. But then that quickly shifted. Companies quickly was like, oh, we need to put our yarn in Gigi's hands. Right. So, I can't say that it was something that I actively pursued. It just kind of happened. And I give Adela the credit for that because she was the first one to say, listen, she didn't send me $10. Like she sent me money. I'm like, wait, hold on. What is happening? Right. So again, you don't see many people that look like me doing this.
How many followers do you have?
Now I'm close to 57,000.
That's on Instagram?
That's Instagram. Yeah.
Is there anybody else in the industry in that neighborhood?
Individually, just like a singular person like me, I don't know. I look at those that I inspired to be. And I look now and I'm like, wow, I passed them by leaps and bounds, and I thought they were the thing. But I think the difference between me and those that I aspired to be is something that you said in the title. It started out with the knitting, but it's more me than it is anything else. So you get my orange passion about whatever I'm thinking about, feeling about, so I think where I will take the term influencer is I like to influence thoughts, right? On purpose. So it has kind of shifted a little bit to that.
I think that what Gigi didn't say is the reason why she has the influence that she has, because you see other influencers out there. Mm-hmm. They're selling you shoes. They're selling you toilet paper. They are selling you all types of things. Gigi is very intentional, mm-hmm. and she is very careful with what she shares with her audience because she respects them. She respects their dollar, and she's not trying to just sell them something quickly to make a buck. And I think that's what sets her apart from a lot of the other influencers that you see out there, on social media platforms.
Yeah, I will also add that she is very genuine as just a human being and shares her emotions and her feelings about things in a way that is so refreshing and genuine. And you get that through the screen, you get that through the newsletters, the blogs, the posts, and all of the ways that she touches our industry. You get that from her. And I always say to her sometimes when she, posts a picture angry or laughing or whatever, I'm like, you give a lot of yourself to us, to people who may not necessarily be deserving of it, but, thank you for that.
So let me ask you this, Gigi. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I sense that you may have been at times a little conflicted about your role, especially in terms of whether you should get paid for what you do. Can you talk to me a little bit about how you've thought that through?
It was confliction more so than it was a low self-esteem, a lack of belief in self. Basically not feeling like I deserved it, right? You see what Adela and Felicia did, and they often do when they see my little insecure Gigi pop her head up, they push her aside and they step in and remind me. I got to learn to take my flowers. I have to learn to appreciate.
She says that to us
all the time.
Like
stay in there,
like finger wagging kind of way.
I don't
receive it that way. Yeah. I can't tell you the number of times I have received a FaceTime with, eyes really close to the screen. Like, what did I tell you? I'm like, okay, like I get it.
and they're right. And there's been times when I did feel like, I'll be like, okay, Adele, I'm going to tell them they're going to have to pay me and blah, blah, blah. And I will lowball myself. Mm-hmm. And the people that's offering me money will say, no, Gigi, we think you deserve this. We're offering you this. I'll be like, Adele, they said they're going to pay me.
Take it all.
Because I'm still that insecure little girl, that was always told I wasn't good enough. I wasn't pretty enough. And she still exists in me. So yes, I am getting paid. Yes, I get paid to speak in person, virtually, like all of that is my reality now. But I still am always shocked. I'll be like, Adela. She'd be like, what? I'll be like, she's like, why are you shocked?
She'd be so excited. And sometimes I have to remember, like, you see how she talks about that little girl inside. I have to remember that little girl because to me, I'm like, okay, so they see what I've seen.
Exactly.
So she calls me. She's like, oh, Adela, you don't know such and such, and they're going to pay me. And I'm like, they should. And then I have to remember, that's that little girl inside of her that, and we will talk about it. And I express like the joy and the happiness. But on the inside, I'm like, I knew it all along.
All right, Felicia, your turn. I'm eager to hear how you got into this business, but let's start. You had a couple of previous lives.
I mean, I learned how to knit as a little girl. And I, at the time, was blessed enough to be old enough to remember both of my great grandmothers. And one taught me how to knit and one taught me how to crochet. And at 6 or 7, whenever it was punishment as far as I was concerned, because that meant I had to sit down and shut up and, not do whatever it was I wanted to do. And so I did it and I learned, and it like lived in some little spot in the back of my head. So I tell people now when they meet me, I'm like, when I was a little girl, I didn't say I wanted to grow up and own a yarn shop. I said I wanted to grow up and be a doctor. And that was what I did. I grew up. I was a podiatrist. I am a podiatrist. I practiced for 10 years between Buffalo, New York, and the DC, Maryland area before I moved back to New York City, probably 16, almost 17 years ago now. And even then, I was still crocheting and I was still knitting, mostly knitting. So I did surgery, and knitting I found helped me keep my dexterity up. So when I wasn't knitting, when I wasn't doing surgery, and after I started having kids and shifted my career from being a full-time doctor to being a full-time stay-at-home mom, when I moved back here to New York, knitting, crafting became a big part of my daily living. When I was in Maryland, I met one of my best friends, Beverly, and her cousin, Nikki. And I feel like as soon as you find another person who knits or crochets or crafts like you suddenly have a coven, like it's real, like you become this little force. And we did everything. Like we went to the festivals, we traveled everywhere we went. We found a yarn shop with everybody, every yarn person, the four of us, the three of us on this screen, and everybody else in the chat will tell you after you book your ticket in your hotel, you figure out where the closest yarn shop is. So we did all of that. Long story short, my mom went in for what should have been an uncomplicated procedure, and it was complicated, and she never woke up. So like Gigi, my knitting held me together during that grieving period, which was and continues to be difficult. It comes in waves. The waves are not as frequent as they used to be, but they used to be pretty bad. And I used to say to people, like, I would get up in the morning, I would get my kids ready for school, and I would get them out the door, and then I would get on the couch and I would knit and cry and watch TV and maybe take a nap. And I did that for a while. And my two girlfriends, Beverly and Nikki, were like, you gotta get up off that couch and you've gotta do something. Like, your mom would not want you sitting here like this. Now, I knew they were right. And so one of my favorite local yarn shops was closing unexpectedly. For those in Brooklyn who know, La Casita was closest to me here in Capitol Hill. And they were closing. I remember being on summer vacation and calling them up and saying, like, what do you mean? And they were like, somebody bought the building, so we're out. Well, one of my girlfriends saw the same email. She didn't call the store. She calls me and is like, you need to call them and tell them you're going to buy that yarn shop. Yes, you need that yarn shop. And I was just like, well, it's not like that. It's not like they can't keep it. It's just not going to be a yarn shop. But the seed was planted. I can remember speaking to a mom, my oldest son, and her son played soccer. And she said to me one day, I remember us having a conversation like what our dream job was and what that entailed. And she said, you described a place that I don't even know how to knit, but I would want to go to that place. Like, that's what you should be doing. Like, that's what you should open. And so she and I, for a minute, tried to do it together. She was going to do like a baking kind of DIY thing, and I was going to run the yarn shop. Eventually she dropped out. She wasn't able to stay with it, and I stuck with it. And that's what eventually turned into Strength Studio. Like, it's not far from my home, and has, the feeling I wanted it was for it to feel like an extension of my living room, of my kitchen. And when you came in, you were grab a plate, like have a seat. Like, at the shop, you have to touch everything when you come in, like that's the rule. I intentionally didn't call it Strength Studio Yarn Shop because I wanted it to be a space where all types of creatives would come in. I didn't want you to feel like you had to come in and think that I was an expert on everything, because I certainly was not. But you should feel comfortable coming in. And if you wanted something and we didn't have it, I was happy to get it for you and get an expert to help you with that. And over the almost 5 years, it'll be 5 years in June 17th, that we've been open, this incredible, loving, crazy community has developed at this shop that is a family in so many ways, the family you choose.
Felicia, if I understand correctly, that didn't just happen. That was kind of a deliberate strategy on your part to involve the community and pull people in with different kinds of events that yard shops traditionally haven't done. Give us a taste of that. What did you do?
Yeah, like, we have a backyard in my shop, which also makes us unique. And because of that, I wanted it to really build a space that, like, I remember the spot in my neighborhood when I was supposed to be coming home from school and I knew nobody was home. It was okay for me to go there because it was safe. I wanted to be that spot in our neighborhood. And where my shop is in Park Slope is tons of kids. If it's not 3 kids, it's 2 dogs. Like, it's just tons of space and that type of community. And we build that. So we have pop-up shows. We had a pop-up cafe in the backyard last year. We do installations. We invite other artists to come in, not even just fiber artists, but artists to come in and do things in our shop. I've hosted writing workshops, where an organization that gave workshops rented out space and had their classes there weekly, almost like 5 out of 6 days out of the week. They were coming to the shop. And so many of those people who were not knitters, but were writers, have come back and said, I started knitting because this place just emotes so much energy and good vibes that I just felt like I needed to learn how to knit. There was a girl, she had to defend her dissertation, and she was like, I want to do it in your backyard. Like, she literally brought her entire class, her professor, her family, to sit in the backyard of my yarn shop to defend her dissertation. So it just feels really good to reserve that space in people's hearts and their lives as a yarn shop and be able to do that.
All right. So we have just heard 3 really moving stories from three smart, delightful, passionate women, which leads to the obvious question, which is, why is there a culture war in the yarn industry right now?
The yarn industry is a cross-section of the world. So it is unrealistic to think that the issues of the world would not find their way into the yarn industry, right? Differences frighten people. You know, people who are different, things that are different make people uncomfortable. I've experienced it in good and bad ways because I'm one of the few Black-owned yarn shops. I'm the only one in the city of New York and only a few of us in the country, right? And I think so many people come in making assumptions, like Adela says, you know, when people walk into the shop, they assume my employees are the owners. We went through that for a number of different years. And, you know, it used to be my employees would be so offended on my behalf. And I was just like, I lived a life where I exist in that world all the time. Like, you couldn't be the doctor, you must be the nurse. You couldn't be the owner, you're Black. Like, you couldn't live in Park Slope, you're Black. You know, like, it's all of those assumptions that people make.
I agree. There's just like she said, it's just a very tiny intersection of the world. There's assumptions that are made about Black people that people truly in their heart of hearts feel like is real, right? So, you know, I would explain situations that happened to me in yarn stores, and my following would always say the same exact thing. They didn't know it was you, Gigi. What does that mean? I don't get that, right? They saw a Black person and they instantly felt, why are you in my yarn shop? Like, one, you can't afford the yarn. They're assuming, right? You know, you can't knit. Black people don't knit. Well, something that Adela said, I can tell you is 100% true, is because as a Black person, you expect rejection. Mm-hmm. We protect ourselves. So those that were in the industry, you didn't know they were in the industry because all you saw was the yarn or whatever they were making. They never did a picture of their hands or themselves for the fear of the backlash. Because you're Black, you're not supposed to be here. So many people do it. Like I have a board on Pinterest about, you know, knitting in Black history. Like, you can go back and find people knitting, Black people knitting, but there was just this assumption that, you know, hand-dyed yarn was more expensive. Black people are poor. They can't afford it. And apparently our hands don't work like everybody else because we can't possibly knit. Like, that's just not a thing. Like, I even had a situation where older woman, they were complimenting me on something I had on. And I said, thank you. And they said, where'd you get it from? And I said, I made it. It was an older woman and her daughter. And when I say an older woman, like, the woman could have been my auntie or, you know, my elder. And the lady put her hands on me and said, no, this. And I said, yes, I made it. She said, that looks like it's knit. It is. I made it. Mm-hmm. She was like, oh, because I didn't think you people, and her daughter pulled her away. Mm-hmm. Right. And the concierge was like, and because I used to travel for work. So I was in that particular hotel probably 2 months. And he was like mortified. He was a white man. And he was like, he was looking at me and I said, did that just happen? He said, it did. I said, did she just you people me? He said, she did. And I'm so sorry. He said, I didn't know what to say. I tried to break it up, but you have the people that feel that way. And for whatever reasons, they keep it to themselves. Right. But let something happen. And like Adela and I often say, the great divide happens. So now, right, I'm going to stand up for my side of the whatever. And we stop being people makers, crafters, because that's what we all have in common. Yep. Right. And now it becomes the issue of race and then it just gets ugly. But I think it's always been there.
I did exactly what Gigi said. When I first opened my shop, it was only pictures of the shop. It was only pictures of the yarn. I had no pictures of myself. And it was intentional, but not for the reasons that I thought initially, but maybe subconsciously it was. And it was a white woman that says, I never see you in any pictures of your shop. I was like, yeah, I'm not important. Like, people want to buy the yarn. She was like, yeah, no, but you're kind of cute. You should be in the pictures. And, we did this thing where it was like, it became, like you say, the super sleuths. There was something that happened in my backyard. There was a documentary and there was a photograph taken and we posted it and we were in the photograph and people literally went through, was like, I know that person. I know that person. I don't know her. Right. She's the owner of the shop. And that was kind of like my outing.
I used the term culture war before, and maybe war isn't the right word, but there's certainly been back and forth and friction. People have had to rebrand, people have closed shops, bloggers have shut down their blogging. A lot of it's been political. It's kind of come in waves. There was a period, I guess, maybe it was 2016. I know you guys don't know what I'm talking about. There was a cultural appropriation issue that was raised by a blogger who took a trip to India.
2018-19.
So there was a wave then. There was another wave after the murder of George Floyd. And my understanding is that each of those waves has presented a complicated situation for each of you.
I call them the Black waves. When something traumatic happens within the Black community and you have this like rush of people who want to genuinely support you and then those who want to exploit you so that they look and seem inclusive and diverse.
Which puts you in the position of trying to figure out who's genuine and who's not.
I've been in situations where, a shop owner has reached out to me because they want to carry my yarn. And they'll say things like, oh, attached, you'll see a donation I've made to the NAACP. These are like real situations that I have it's difficult. It is really difficult to maneuver that. It's painful. I think when I say difficult, people just think from a business standpoint, but from a personal standpoint, it is extremely painful to break your back to make a product that you feel is, superior, and to send it out to people who will then sell it, but they don't care about the person who's doing all of this work. So ultimately, where that has put me today is I no longer wholesale.
Well, let's step back there for a second. There's been a more recent incident, which remarkably was triggered by
my mouth.
Vogue knitting. That's not what I was going to say. I was going to say it was triggered in part by Vogue knitting putting Michelle Obama on the cover.
That was the trigger, but that's not even the main point. The focus of that was basically the exploitation of Black women and people not standing up for supporting and protecting Black women was the bigger conversation that came from that. And because of that whole situation and the silence that was deafening from so many people who were making money off of my hard work and my product, if you're going to carry products from Lola Bean Yarn Co. and other Black makers within this industry, and you see that Black women are coming under attack, I'm going to need you to stand up and support Black women. You might be placing in wholesale order, but I can sell that retail in my shop. I can give myself a raise and make all the money, right? But this is a system to where we help each other. You're a yarn shop. I give you yarn. I sell you yarn that you can, we keep each other afloat, right? Support one another. But when it comes to Black makers in this industry, we are treated differently still, and we experience a lot of unfairness. And when those situations and things happen, when those things arise, you have to speak up. And if you're not going to speak up, and if you're not going to defend these makers that you're carrying and making money off of, then you don't deserve those products. So I took all of my product back.
You had been selling wholesale to shops
around the world.
And you closed down all of those sales?
I have a queue where people will give me half of the money up front so that I can secure their base. And once they come up on my schedule, I dye it, they send me the rest of the money, and then I ship out their yarn. I gave it back $40,000, $50,000 in 3 days in deposits. Peace of mind is priceless.
Amen.
And me giving that money back was absolutely just the peace that I got from that and the heaviness that started to lift. I'd do it all over again if I had to, because what I want to do now moving forward is I want to, not that I wasn't thoroughly vetting, but I don't think I was doing enough.
Vetting the people you were selling to?
Yes. I want to see where you stand. I want to ask you hard questions. I want to know that if, Black makers in this community are being mistreated or they're not getting the same opportunities and offers that white makers are getting, I want to make sure you're going to say something. I want to make sure that you are doing everything you can to help, because Black makers in this community aren't asking for more than anybody. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions. They think we want more. We want more than you. No, we want the same.
Mm-hmm.
So what aren't you getting that others do get?
Oh my goodness. We can talk about opportunities at events, yarn events, mm-hmm. where, I've gone to events where I didn't see a single Black vendor, mm-hmm. and they're there. Right? So you don't get those opportunities. When you talk about influencers Black influencers that don't get paid the same as white influencers, where they'll give,
Gigi?
they'll give a white influencer, $1,000 for a post. And then they want to give the Black influencer, a sample. Here's a free sample, things like that. Like there are so many different ways that we are mistreated, charging us for things that, our white counterparts are not charged for, because we might be newer, right? Because you've never allowed us in. Now you're allowing us in, but then you're taking advantage of us as we're coming through the door. Mm-hmm. So I need to make sure that the people that I am aligning myself with are going to help me level the playing field. And if you're not going to help me level the playing field, that's fine. But please do not look for Lola Bean Yarn Co. yarn to be in your shops, to be at your event.
Gigi, can you tell us how you think about that?
Listen, Adela calls it a wave. There was some time we said, like this last time, we said it was a tsunami. Because you would just get blown away by the number of new followers, which is fine, welcome. But I always felt like I had to stand at my virtual door and say, the only color I have for you is orange. Don't follow me because I'm Black. That's not fair. Okay. And that it went from that to everybody wanted. Gigi, can you speak? At that point, I had never spoken anywhere. Speak about what? What are you talking about? Can you do this? Can you do that? Gigi, we want, and I didn't even know these people. Adela can tell you. I'd be like, Adela, who is this? You ever heard of this? Felicia, what's this yarn? I don't even know these people. And, I would go, like Adela said, vet. I'll go on their page. And the only thing Black on the screen was the ink. I'm like, yeah, no, thank you. I'm not your token Black knitter, right? At that point, I was very solid in the fact that my followers pay attention. So if I go do something with company XYZ, now my followers are going with me, right? Now, here you go. You ain't really fond of Black people, really, but you need somebody to make you look like you are. But on that same note, right, where I know for a fact that others, influencers, have been paid. Oh, Gigi, we can send you some free yarn. I'm like, do you know Adela COVID? I don't never need yarn the rest of my life. If you want me, you're gonna have to pay for me, right? And I confidently say that now because not because I feel like I'm all of this, but I know you would pay my white counterpart and you wouldn't even dare ask them without already having money in your pocket. Mm-hmm. Right. So I get a lot of emails. Gigi, we'll pay you, $50 and we want to post in your feed. We want a story. Can you write a blog? What? No, thank you. No, thank you. I should charge you for even reading this email. No, thank you. Right. Because I know the power of my audience. Clearly, we have all seen the differences in how we're treated. And that's why when we do things on our own, right? When I met Felicia and I met Adela, again, the love affairs with the three of us had not started. But the first thing I said to Felicia, I don't know if you know Adela Colvin, but you need to meet her. Yeah. I said to Adela, I don't know that you know this Black woman in Brooklyn got a shop, but we need to get.
That's the Black doctor, right? She a Black doctor. Call me when you get there.
You know, in one space, we said we want to be diverse and we want to be included and don't block us out. But you want to block us out? We could do things together ourselves, right? We have amassed a following on our own, but we're not those people. Yeah. We love people. We love makers, whatever shape, form, or fashion you come in, but we still get, you know, and it's getting better, but it takes, like, how many times do we have to climb uphill, icy hill, on skates every time to make people see? Stop.
The first time we all met was at Adela's first trunk show at my shop. Mm-hmm. And we were like, it's going to be 3 days long and we're going to do X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. And it was funny because a woman who worked for me and she was just like, I don't think you understand like that this is like very special, like that this is even happening. And I'm like, it's yarn. They were like, no, like you got a Black dyer, a Black influencer, and a Black yarn shop owner. Like, that doesn't.
We really weren't thinking that way.
We had no idea, and we had no yarn by the end of the day. Like by midday, we were like, "Well, I guess we just dancing tomorrow. We're gonna dress up dance."
Yeah, we got. As soon as they come in the door, we was gonna like, I was like, because I said
it was like a family reunion. The backyard was packed for 3 days. People were driving from 2 hours away to get there. It was just beautiful. Like it was really.
They drove for 2 days and you didn't have any yarn for them?
She made special yarn. It sold out the first, like before the end of the first day, it was gone. I didn't even get some of the special dyed yarn. I didn't even get any. I didn't even get to put it aside. We were putting it on the wall and people were walking in and taking it out of our hands.
Snatching it out of our hands. Like I went to Adela. I was like, where's the bag? She was like, bag of what? I said,
bag of what? It was gone.
She said, I said, wait, no, but it's only been 3 hours. Like we got the rest of today. So I guess my point in sharing that is we're powerful on our own. Like we've figured that out, but we shouldn't have to be on our own, right? We shouldn't have to be separate in an industry that's for makers. It doesn't say you got to be a certain race, creed, financial background in order to knit. It's just knitters, and we shouldn't have to be not showing our pictures. And that's why my feed, people that don't know me, they probably think like she's full of herself. Nope, I need you to know this is a Black corner of the orange world. I need you to be clear.
In getting to know the three of you, I have the sense that each of you has incredible potential to build the businesses that you are building. And I'm not sure you're nearly as far along as you could or possibly should be. And I'm wondering, I hope I'm not offending you by saying that, but I'm curious how you think about it. Adela, let me start with you. I know I talked to you over a year ago and you were all sold out for months and months to come, and you still are. Why haven't you hired employees? Why aren't you making more yarn? Do you feel something is holding you back from doing that?
I think I'm a risk for some people, right? Because I very much say what I want, when I want, how I want. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's gotten me in hot water. The bigger you get, one, it doesn't seem as personal to me. And I really think that a lot of people who support Lola Bean Yarn Co. Do I dye nice yarn? Yeah, the people say I do. Okay. But I think they're here for me. They are here for what I stand for. That piece of that is what keeps people supporting me, not necessarily just the yarn. And I struggle with losing that. I don't want to get so big that I lose that. That's one thing. And then from like the purely business side of it, COVID. COVID happened. And not that it hurt me in any way, because that was probably my best year ever when COVID hit. But my family was living in what is now my studio. That was our home. So I was working with my family there. I didn't want to start bringing people in because my kids. And then, somebody comes to work for Lola Bean Yarn Co. And then when they leave, they're going out maskless to the club at night with their friends. There were just too many risks and unknowns, and I wasn't comfortable with taking those chances. We've now separated the studio. We now have, the new house where we live, and I work over there by myself. So ultimately, I do want to grow, but I want to grow at a pace that works for me, that I am comfortable with, that is safe. And believe it or not, I'm not braggadocious. I try my hardest to stay humble. I like to help people. I like to spread money around that I make, but I think a lot of people would be very surprised if they saw the numbers now and what I do behind the scenes. Like, people say, don't you want to grow? Don't you want to grow? And they have no idea how I am growing. But that's not for everybody to see.
Gigi, we've talked a little bit about what's holding you back and some of the issues and the way you are treated as opposed to other influencers. You do work a day job. Mm-hmm. Is it your goal to be able to stop working that day job and be able to do
my dream job, right? Yes, and it's like a comfort thing for me now, because if I look at the dollars, Adela and Felice can tell you, I was shocked when I did my taxes last year, because my tax lady was like, chick, this is more than a side thing here. What is happening, right? So because it comes in drips and drabs, it's not I get paid every week. You get the security of working, right? And in an environment like this, I might get lump sums here and there, right? So it's that security blanket. The good part about my day job, although, yes, I do have a traditional 9 to 5, I work for a former boss. Like, he was vice president at Verizon while I was there. And as much as I am one of his biggest fans, it's reciprocal, right? So when I was like, Bob, I know I only get X amount of weeks for vacation. However, I'm supposed to be on a plane pretty much every month from February to October. He was like, do they have Wi-Fi where you're going? I said, yeah. He said, take your laptop with you. I said, I swear I love you. So it's like, there's really no big rush to get out of this job, because I can do it in my sleep. And something that you said, again, the potential for the three of us to be bigger than what we are. Mm-hmm. Again, you have that culture difference, right? It is assumed that white people go into business and are automatically successful. Right. And it's the opposite.
I know a lot of unsuccessful white business owners.
No, yes, I agree there. But the assumption,
they do it again, and they do it,
and they right, because they grow up thinking that I should have my own business. They grow up thinking I should have my own home, and if that's not something you grew up around, it's something that you saw, you can't see yourself there. You hear the term often, representation matters, right? So, my logo is probably when I really exploded, because other Black people could see themselves knitting. People would stop me if I had a shirt on or if I was carrying one of my bags. Where did you get that from? And I'm like, it's mine. No. Where'd you buy it? No, on my website. Because I've never seen Black people knitting. And I'm like, where were you looking? So there's just those expectations that still are very powerful in our minds, right? Yes, you see more people in business and more people being successful and more people making a lot more money and doing risky things. But still, even that, the stairs that we got to climb to get there, where somebody else, oh, sure, come on in. We'll do whatever you want to do. What, you need money? You need a fund, a grant? Here. Us, we got to fill out a dissertation and have it, notarized and sealed, and God kiss it. And did he kiss it on a Tuesday or a Wednesday? Because if it was Tuesday, then we can't take this. So there's so many different hoops as a Black person that we have to go through. Sometimes we're just like,
I also think that for a long time, when you talk about racism and white supremacy being embedded and ingrained in the very fabric of this country, the society, the world, that for so long, Black people were raised to be model employees. White people were raised to be the owners and the bosses.
Tell it.
We're now breaking free from that. We're breaking free from those stereotypes. And people will see you, and that's why when they go to Felicia's shop, she's not the owner. the white girl who she hired is.
Mm-hmm.
I've had people come to a fiber festival and literally push me out of my own booth to talk to the two white girls I had working in my booth, because obviously they're the dyers and the owners, not the black girl they just pushed out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
I get that question that you asked, like, you know, you could be so much bigger. You could be, as a Black woman, I'm huge.
Right.
Because we don't do this.
I hear you. Felicia, you have a yarn shop in Park Slope in Brooklyn. That's a prosperous neighborhood. You have a shop. It's been around for 5 years now. That's an integral part of the community. And yet when I talked to you a little over a year ago, you told me that you didn't really count on it, your shop, to pay your rent.
My thing was, you don't say I want to retire. You don't say I'm gonna own a yarn shop so I can retire from being a yarn shop. Yeah. Well,
why not?
We're trying to change that, right? Like, we're trying to change that notion. Owning a brick and mortar store is a completely different beast than just being, you know, having a product to sell, right? You got rent, you got overhead, you got employees, and you have to have employees. Because it's so funny. I was talking to another small business owner who just opened, her and her partner were open 7 days a week, and we're always in the shop or whatever. And I told him, I was like, stop doing that. Like, just stop, because you're gonna be sick. Like, and I did it because I did it. You know, like, it was like nobody else could be in there. People walked in, they wanted to see me. Like, they wanted to come in, and people still want to come in and see me. But I have learned over the 5.5 years that it's okay for them to walk in and somebody else take care of them. Mm-hmm. And you're supposed to hire people who think and act and can imbue your spirit, even though it is not you. They can be your ambassador in your space. That is a requirement of the job, right? They work with me. They understand what I do and how I welcome people in the shop. And that is my expectation, that the same welcome should happen when I am not in the shop. People come to Park Slope. We become a destination. We become a destination shop. I can't tell you how many people, when I come to New York City, as soon as I can travel, I'm coming to New York City and I'm coming to Strengthening Studio. I want to come to your knit night. I want to sit in your backyard. I want to do that. We have created a space. And when I say we, it's me and it's my community who work along with me, have created this space where people, I don't care what color you are, they want to come to, I don't care, man, woman, dog, like, I don't care what it is. They want to come, they want to hang out. They want to, they want to sit in the backyard. They want to eat the bagels from across the street. They want to do all of that because that's what we've created. And it took time to learn about that, like having to rest and when to say no. And, to get back to where you put your money, what companies that you choose to spend your money to stock your store with. Mm-hmm. Like, there have been brands that I have chosen, I'm not going to buy from them anymore. Like, there's one now that people constantly come in and asking me about. And I'm like, not really into the distributor anymore. So I'm not really sure we're going to carry this much longer. So get it while you can, and it took a while for me to get confident enough to do that. And I think that comes with understanding that we're more than a yarn shop. People can get yarn anywhere. We can all buy yarn online from Adela. They don't have to come to Strengthening Studio to buy the yarn.
She's sold out.
She sold out, right? So they only when they sold out, when she sold out, they come and buy yarn from my store or whatever else I have in there. But we are more than just a yarn store. And it took me a minute to understand that.
That's why I should be able to retire someday on what you're doing.
Exactly.
We've talked about some of the negative aspects of what's happened in your industry, and I'd like to finish with one that I think you see as a real positive one, although it was a difficult moment, and that's involves your store, Felicia, during COVID, when I believe your landlord slapped a sign on the door saying that if you weren't going to be paying rent, you would have to find some other place, and you weren't sure what you were going to do and how you were going to save the store.
I was on vacation. I had finally had gone on a vacation with my family. And then one of my customers, one of my shop mamas, I call her, sent me a text message like, I just saw this on the gate of your shop. And it was a letter from an attorney's office with this blah, blah in it. I had been in conversation with my landlord about, we need to renegotiate this rent. Like, I've been closed for X number of months. Business is not the same. And we had made a verbal agreement about some different things, but then he had decided he was going to go to an attorney and purport that I owed him more rent than I actually did and slapped a letter on the front of the gate. So it made people think when they brought by that I was not going to be open anymore. Had my personal business, my personal address, all this stuff on the taped to the front of my store while I'm on vacation, which he knew I was on vacation. And so it was the last few days and I was on the phone with, I think I text. It was Della, it was Gigi, and it was Lewis from Brooklyn Boy Knits. And I was texting them and they were like, what are you talking about? I texted them a picture of the letter and everybody was hot, to say the least. Hot was an understatement. And they were like, well, you could do so. I was like, no, let me just think about it. I can try to figure this out. I can try to figure out how to make this work, or maybe I just don't. But then I got a FaceTime and all 4 screens, like from all like 3 faces popped up.
Are we
like,
doing a GoFundMe or what?
That's right. And it was like, what do you mean you got to figure it out? We're just going to do a GoFundMe. I was like, no. We don't.
Look, and I was like, look, I got to get dressed.
She was like, I'm going to get a shower and get dressed because I can do a live. And I was like, wait. And they were like, all you have to do is say yes.
And then move out our way.
Just say yes. And I was like, but they were like, but nothing. Just say yes. And I said, but I have to do. Adele was like, I already have the.
I wrote it all up.
While you're talking on FaceTime, you wrote up.
She was like, it's already done. All you have to do is give me this information. Gigi was like, I'm getting dressed, put my face on so I can do it. And Lewis was like, just send it to me so I can promote it. I said, well, send it to me. What do you want me to do? They were like, go to the beach. Go to the beach and sit down and enjoy yourself and enjoy your vacation and let us see what happened. And that was like 11:30, 12 p.m. that morning. And by 6 p.m. we had to close it because we had raised, I think I needed like $17,000 or something like that.
This happened without you even telling
I told nobody on my followers at all. It was all of their followers, and people who follow me were confused. They're like, what are you talking about? And so by the end of the day, we closed it at 6 o'clock because it was just getting embarrassing at that point. And then when people discovered it and were going back trying to figure out how to give, they couldn't give because it was closed. So they were just sending money to PayPal, like sending me PayPal money.
It wasn't just customers of yours or knitters around the country. No. You also heard from a lot of people in the industry, right?
Absolutely. They were like, you can't go. And somebody says, I hope you weren't planning on going anywhere because the village said, no, you can't go. It chokes me up. And I did my thank you video afterwards, which I got through almost without crying. I had to do it twice. I did the second one, I posted and I sent it to people. And then that's when I posted it on my timeline because then all these people started following me. And then my people were like, well, wait, what happened? Like, I don't understand it. So then it was this whole other wave of like, we're buying gift certificates because there's no other way for us. We're going to buy gift certificates for you to just have this cash. And it was the most beautiful expression of support that I have ever experienced. So I know that this industry is not just a fluke. I know that this industry is not like, who does she think she is? Who do they think they are? These brown people doing X. I know that because I still get people who come up to me at different things or send me messages or show up at my Vogue knitting lives or come in the most craziest places. I meet people who know who I am. So it's like, I know in a way that is so heartfelt that I'm doing something good here. And sometimes that doesn't always equate to cash, though we would love for it to do so. But I'm fortunate and blessed enough to be like, sometimes you just need that feeling. You just need to have that acceptance that what you're doing is significant to people. And they showed that to me in a way that was, I'm still overwhelmed by it.
I really want to thank all of you, Felicia Eve, Gigi Glaspie, and Adela Colvin. This has been a terrific conversation. I've really enjoyed getting the opportunity to spend this time with you. Wait, don't leave yet. If you have a question or a comment that you'd like the 21 Hats owners to address, send it to me by replying to your morning report or by email at lauren@21hats.com. That's LOREN @21hats.com. Do it now before you forget. And don't be afraid to tell Jay what you really think. He can take it. And if you got something out of this conversation, help us reach more business owners. Tell a friend. Subscribe and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Twitter. Subscribe to The Morning Report at 21hats.com. This episode was produced by Jess Thuberon, founder of Blank Word Productions. Okay, now you can leave. Thanks for listening, everyone.